Hi everyone. A lot of people have been reaching out to me recently about how to become a technical writer, how to land a job as a technical writer, a lot of questions around technical writing. And they've said they've seen my content, they've seen how high quality my content is, and they want to learn from me. Yeah. So I thought to do this video recording where I talk about how to become a technical writer in an hour or less and talk about creating high quality content. All right, so that's what this video is about. Long story short, you don't need to be a programmer, you don't need to be perfect, you just need to understand people and write with clarity. So get a notebook, get comfortable, and pause the video when you need to take notes or just reflect. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to divide this video into two parts. The first part would be on becoming a technical writer. The second part would be on creating high quality content. All right. So I'm going to start with the first part on becoming a technical writer. So, first of all, first things first, what is technical writing? Technical writing means, in very simple terms, technical writing means explaining something technical in a way that someone else can use it or understand it. I'll take that again. Technical writing means explaining something technical in a way that someone else can use it or understand it. So it's not only about academic writing. It is not I wouldn't say it's not writing for other writers, it's writing for users. I hope you understand what I mean. So you're writing for users, you're not writing for other writers. So it can be how to set up an application, it can be how to call an API if you're a developer, or if you're more inclined towards software development, you should understand what an API is. So it could be how to call an API. It could be how a process or system works. It could be describing how the process works in a way someone understands it, in a way a product user understands it. Or it could even be what went wrong during a deployment. It could be, let's say you work in the cloud space. Let's say you work as a DevOps engineer. Let's say you work as a developer, or you're learning something in tech. You're learning JavaScript. You're learning Node.js, and you solved a bug last week, or you solved an issue last week, or you figured out an easier way to carry out a particular process, and you decide to tell someone else about how you went about that process in a simple way, as simple as possible. Now, I'll give you another example. Let's say a new developer on your team needs to know how to deploy your application. You can call the document, or you can title the content like something like how to deploy your app, or how to deploy our app to staging using Docker. Now that's technical writing. Or you want to explain the difference between REST and GraphQL. You write an article on REST versus GraphQL, what beginners need to know. That's the title of the content. And that's what we call technical content writing. So in essence, technical writing is equal to, or technical writing equates to helping someone else understand or do something technical. So you can see that our job is not to make things look or sound more complicated, but our job is to help someone understand something. That's our job. Now, who can become a technical writer? A lot of people have reached out to me and have asked this question. They've said, can I become a technical writer? Do I have what it takes to become a technical writer? So I'm going to address that question as much as I can now. Now, the truth is, you don't need to be an engineer. You don't need to have a fancy degree to become a technical writer. It depends. For a fancy degree, you don't need a fancy degree. For being an engineer, it depends. Context matters. All right. So, first of all, what do you need in general? What do you need to become a technical writer? You need one, curiosity. A lot of people have told me I'm a very curious person. Before technical writing, I've always been a curious person. I've always been someone that's very curious. I want to understand how this thing works. I want to understand. I'm very curious. In fact, I love learning. I enjoy the learning process a lot. And you need curiosity. You need a certain level of curiosity to be able to enjoy learning. As a student, I've always been someone who loves learning. I might not really enjoy the formal classroom setting, but I would always go back home during my university days to study on my own, to learn. I read books. I try to expand my knowledge base, because I'm curious. All I'm trying to say is you need a certain level of curiosity. I would say a high level of curiosity to be a technical writer. Secondly, you need clear thinking. You need clear thinking. Thirdly, you need writing basics. You need the basic writing skills. And then the fourth thing is you need a desire to help others learn or solve a problem. In fact, that was how I got started in technical writing. I never knew there was a thing called technical writing. I was just someone who loved explaining what I was learning or what I was playing around with, any technology I was playing around with. I used to be that person that loved sharing knowledge, that loved helping other people learn or solve a problem. Yeah. And one of my articles got featured on one of these writing platforms, and a lot of people will message me. I would go somewhere. I would be at let's say a tech event, or I would be in some gathering with some developers, and then someone will walk to me and say, "Oh, were you the one that wrote that article on this on how to do this and that and that?" Do you understand? And I'll be so excited, because I'm like, yes, my content is actually helping others learn or solve a problem. So you have to be someone that has that desire to want to help others learn. And it's something that many other people don't mention. I've seen a lot of people talk about technical writing, and there's something very key that many people do not mention. For you to be a technical writer, an actual technical writer, you should be able to put yourself in the shoes of the reader, of the person who would read that content. Can you think beyond yourself? Can you think and place yourself in the shoes of whoever you're writing for, whoever it is that you're writing for? That's a very important skill, as much as curiosity, as much as clear thinking, as much as writing basics, as much as the desire to help others learn or solve a problem. As much as all of those are very important, it is a very important skill to know how to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're trying to communicate a certain fix to a problem, or a certain solution to a problem. So I hope you understand what I'm saying. All right. So going to break down some common backgrounds. So for instance, if you're from a writing background, you know it means you know how to communicate clearly through writing. Now, all you need to learn, let's say if from a writing background already, all you need to learn are tech basics that would get you started. Right, you can start if you're leaning towards writing for developers. You can writing for software developers, right, backend developers or front-end developers. It means you have to understand their lingua. I don't know if that's what they call it, but you need to understand how developers reason. You need to understand how the things that the developers who you intend to write for are trying to solve, the problems they're trying to solve, the things they're trying to understand. You need to understand that. And for you to be able to communicate effectively with developers, it means, for instance, developers, it means you have to understand they're working on, what they're playing around with. So for instance, you want to write for backend developers and you don't understand what APIs are. You have to go and learn. So even if you have the writing background, even if you know how to communicate clearly, you have to still learn. You need to sit down and take your time, watch YouTube tutorials, practical learning. I believe in practical based learning. So as much as you'd use YouTube tutorials, for instance, you have to play around with it yourself, try it out yourself, and learn. So you have to learn what APIs are. You have to, if for instance, if you're writing for cloud engineers, you're writing for DevOps engineers, you're writing for platform engineers, you're writing for people in the cloud native ecosystem, you have to understand how cloud tools work. You can't run away from it. So you have to learn those basics, at least start from somewhere. You can learn those basics, and that's the only way you can communicate effectively to your target audience. Now, The same thing, you want to write for developers in general, you need to understand how applications work. So those are some of the things you should keep in mind. Secondly, if you're from tech, you have, let's say you have an engineering background, you have QA background, you have support background, because a lot of people have also reached out to me and say, oh, I'm a developer, I'm trying to transition into technical writing, how do I go about it? So I'm speaking to you right now. So you already know how things work, right? You already know how things work. So all you need to do now is learn the structure, the empathy, and how to write. You need to learn how to write for others, especially non-engineers. You have to. Now, there's something I've noticed from my experience. I'm speaking from experience now, and from all other people I've watched and seen in the technical writing space. I've seen some engineers that I've seen very technical people, very technical people, I would say engineers, who transition from development to technical writing. And there's something I've noticed, most of them struggle with simplifying concepts. They struggle with, do you know why? It's because they're very technical. They're very technical, and they haven't understood or crafted that skill of writing for others. Now, when I say others, I don't want to, I'm trying as much as possible not to go deep into it because I'm introducing you to technical writing technically, yeah. But in technical writing, you have different target audiences you're writing for. And if you remember correctly, when I started talking about how to become a technical writer, I talked about you writing for users, right? So those users are the same as target audiences. Now you have different target audiences you're writing for. You could be writing for instance, if you're writing for developers, are the developers you're writing for, are they beginners? Are they intermediate developers? What is their level of experience? So it depends. It depends on the level of experience of the developers you're writing for. So if you're writing for a developer who's a newbie, you're writing for a beginner, a beginner developer, you would use a language, you will communicate in a way, in a manner that sounds simple and resonates with the beginner. So it's very important that you learn how to write for others. And when I say others, you learn how to write for different target groups, different target audiences. Now, also, if you're starting from zero, if you do not fall into the two categories I just mentioned, if you don't fall under the category of someone from a writing background, if you don't fall under the category for someone from an engineering background, you're starting from zero. You just want to get into technical writing. You don't have prior experience in any of these fields. Then what you can do is, I mean, you can still do it. Don't let anyone tell you you can't. You can still do it. All you have to do is pick one topic, learn it. If you want to, I can give you a head start. Write for developers, right? You want to write for developers. Like I said earlier, learn what it means to be a developer. First of all, learn different aspects of being a developer. Front end development, learn what it is. When I say learn what it is, I'm not saying go into I'm saying, I'm not saying go into details at this point. I'm saying just learn what is front end development, what is back end development, how do they connect with each other. Do you understand? Then you can now start going in depth. You can now start understanding the tools. You can now start playing around with it, playing around with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, playing around with APIs. Just to get the knowledge. It's very important. Get the knowledge. Now, at the same time you're doing that, this is how you can start technical writing. At the same time you do that, you are writing about what you're learning. I'm going in the next section. I'm going to talk about how you can transition into how you can structure technical writing. But for now, this is more of a talk. This is more of a, I would say, a theoretical video. So I'm not going to be sharing my screen to show you structure and all that. All right, so moving forward. Right, so okay. So like I said, if you how you can transition into technical writing, the ways you can transition to technical writing, if you have a writing background, what you can do is you can learn Markdown. You can study, you can learn how to write in Markdown format. You can Google Markdown format and learn Markdown format. You can study documentation from Stripe, from GitHub, from DigitalOcean. Look out for documentation online. You can search for Stripe documentation. Stripe is spelled STRIPE. STRIPE. look out for Google, do a quick Google search and just search Stripe documentation and look at how it's structured so that you can understand how documentation samples are structured. Now you can also go on platforms like dev.to. You can look for technical articles and see how they're structured. You can check my technical articles as well. If you check my portfolio, you can see some samples, some articles I've written in the past. You can see how they're structured. You can get an idea of what the technical article looks like. You can also look out for other tech articles that look confusing and rewrite them in your own words. That's the best way of learning. The best way of learning is seeing that thing you want to do, seeing the result already, following similar formats and learning and advancing on what you already know. Right. Then you can also build a sample portfolio with 2 or 3 tutorials. As a technical writer, your portfolio is the content that you put out. The content can vary from um, articles can be how-to guides, meaning an article that guides a user on how to do something. It can be a tutorial, which is similar to how-to guides, that walks you through a process of doing something with an end goal. That's a tutorial. And it could be a documentation. It could be an API documentation. Google what that means. It could be a product documentation. Google what that means. All right. So I'm going to move forward. So, like I said earlier, if you're coming from tech background, what you can do is you take notes as you work. You can write up bugs, processes, and fixes. You can write about how you fixed a particular bug. You can write about a certain process you're taking or you took in the past week or in the past 2 months. You can write about the fixes. And if you don't know where to start from, like I said, look out for technical articles that are already existing and follow the format. It's as simple as that. Yeah, I know it might sound complicated at first, but just look at someone else's work and try to emulate them. Then you can also turn your internal documentation in your company into clear external articles. You can try doing that. You can also write how articles like how X works, how something works, kind of articles on tools that you use. That's for someone who has a tech background. That's something you can do to get started as a technical writer. Now, if you're starting from scratch, like I said earlier, what you can do is you learn the basics of one tool. It could be learning the basics of Docker. It could be learning the basics of Postman. It could be learning the basics of Git. Then take screenshots, write a how-to guide. All right. Um, try to use visuals as well. When I say visuals, I mean diagrams, illustrations, designs. Like I said earlier, look at sample articles already existing and see what I mean. That's the fastest way you can learn. All right. So and you can start a Notion page or a GitHub repo with your examples, with your samples rather. So you can have your samples and GitHub repo. You can create a Notion page. If you don't know Notion, you can Google Notion. You can create a Notion page and have your samples. In case you're wondering where you can start writing, you can use Notion. You can use Google Docs. That's the easiest. You can use Google Docs. If you want to you want to use Markdown format, you can use Notion. There's a couple of tools out there. You can just Google. All right. Then like I said, the reason why I keep saying Google is because as technical writer, like I said earlier, you have to have a certain level of curiosity. So as I'm saying these things, if you've not heard them before, you should be Googling. You can save the names somewhere in your Jotpad and then Google them later on. Now you can also write like okay, so we can write this down. Say, start with what I know, write one sample per week, because I know people always struggle. People can take advice, but they always struggle on getting started. So this is what you can do if you're starting from scratch and you want to become a technical writer. Write this down somewhere. Write down, I'll start with what I know. I'll start with what I know. I would write one sample per week. I'll write one sample per week and I'll improve as I go. I will improve as I go. All right, cool. Now, what makes a good writing example, or rather, what makes a good writing sample? Your portfolio is equal to your proof as a technical writer. Your portfolio is your proof as a technical writer, not your resume, not your fancy degree. Your samples are your portfolio, your content samples. What you have written are your proof as a technical writer, and that is your portfolio as a technical writer. Now, I'm going to give you a three-piece starter portfolio that you can use. One, you can have three. The first one, you can have a tutorial. Second one, you can have an explainer article. I'll give you examples, don't worry. Third one, you can have a rewrite. You can do a rewrite. Now, for the first one, you can have you can do a tutorial like deploy. For instance, I'm giving you an example title right now. Come up with yours. So, for instance, you can do a tutorial on the topic deploy a static site on Netlify in under 10 minutes. Now, with your level of curiosity as a technical writer, you would have to research how to do this. If you don't already know how to do this, you research how do I deploy a static site on Netlify in under 10 minutes. You try it out yourself. As you're trying it out, you're noting down the process that you took. You're also noting down the errors that you noticed along the way, the things that stressed you out, the reason why I'm saying this is as a technical writer, you're putting yourself in the user's shoes. So those issues the user would encounter, just as you would encounter if you're doing this for the first time, you have to note them down as well. Because, like I said, you're trying to help them solve their issue, whatever issue they might encounter, at the same time achieve a goal, right? So and this goal and the goal in this case is what to deploy a static site on Netlify in under 10 minutes. So that's one topic you can do. You can write on that. So you can also include screenshots. Why do we include visuals like screenshots, diagrams, illustrations in articles or in content as technical writers? The reason why we do that is because we want to give the reader a clear understanding of the processes that we are taking, or the processes that they are taking. They need to understand at one point, for instance, if the tutorial, they need to understand, okay, what does this look like at this point? As they're um reading the tutorial, they're trying it out at the same time, and they understand that okay, I'm at the right point at this time. They understand that okay, I'm following the right process because as I can see a clear screenshot that shows the exact stage where I am currently, right? So screenshots help in such scenarios. Also, screenshots help with understanding. We're enhancing understanding. Screenshots, images rather, help with understanding, illustrations to illustrate an idea, to tell them this is how it looks like, and give them a visual picture or visual understanding of the information you're trying to pass across. And also numbered steps. The reason why we have numbered steps or bulleted steps, numbered steps, most especially in tutorials, is because we want them to know, have a mental picture of the amount of steps it will take them, and also have like a logical flow to know that okay, so after this first step I move to the second step, so after the second step I move to the third step, after the third step, oh, I have two more steps left to go, and then I'm in the last step, I get to the final step. All right, that okay. Now, secondly, remember I'm giving you a 3P starter portfolio on how you can make a good writing sample as a technical writer. Secondly, you can do an explainer article. An explainer article is a what is article. For instance, it could be what is CICD and why does it matter? What is CICD and why does it matter? That is an explainer article. You're teaching a concept in your own words. So that's what an explainer article. An explainer article is a type of article where you teach a concept in your own words. You're helping the reader or the user understand a particular concept. You include visuals, you walk them through the process, you teach them. So it's basically teaching, all right? Now you can do that kind of article like what is CICD or what is something. Could be something basic. It doesn't have to be complex. Like I said, it's you're using this to try it out. You're using this to try out technical writing and see if it's something for you. And if it's something for you, you continue with it, right? So don't be too hard on yourself. You don't have to write something extremely complex. All right. Three, you can do a rewrite. You can do a rewrite. What do I mean? You can pick a confusing page from a public documentation site available online, and you can rewrite it with a better structure. If you're someone trying to get better at documentation, if you're someone trying to practice your documentation skills, you can pick a confusing page from a public docs site and rewrite it with better structure. How do you know how do you know how do you know which is a better structure? Stripe documentation is a very good example. You can look at Stripe documentation, look at the structure, and or look for a documentation similar to the documentation you're trying to rewrite. If they're similar to the products they're offering, because there's no one size fits all when it comes to documentation. All right, so look at something similar to the product they're offering, and see the structure they use and try to emulate it, right, with this documentation site you're looking at. All right, let's move on. Now, another thing that can help you make a, or rather, what makes a good writing sample, because that's the question I'm answering now. What makes a good writing sample? Another thing is using GitHub pages, Notion, Hashnode, and Medium. If you have not heard of any of those, please do a quick Google search. GitHub pages, you can Google what is GitHub Pages, how do I use it, right? How do I use GitHub Pages? Notion, you can Google how do I use Notion. Hashnode, you can check out Hashnode. Hashnode is similar to Medium. There's Dev.to as well. Dev.to is also an awesome platform where a lot of developers put out content. You can check Dev.to. To Dev.to is dev.to, dev.to, and you can check out Medium as well, where you have like a large base of writers that come together, not only technical writers. All right. So write this down. Your first samples don't need to be perfect. So write it like, my first samples don't need to be perfect. They need to be clear and useful. My first samples don't need to be perfect. They need to be clear and useful. Okay. Now let's move on. You can pause the video while you write that down. All right, let's move on. Now, how do you get your first opportunity? This is a very critical question I get asked often. How do I get my first opportunity as a technical writer? Okay, I've been trying out technical writing. I've written a couple of articles, but I don't seem to know how to get an opportunity, get my first opportunity as a technical writer, whether paid or unpaid. I just want to get an opportunity, right? So if that's a question you've always had, I'll help you answer in a few. Now, you've done the work, right? Now, how do you get noticed? These are the things you can focus on. The first thing you can focus on is LinkedIn strategy. The second thing are freelance platforms. Third thing is open source. And the fourth thing is applying for internships and junior roles. I'm going to go over each of them. Now, the first thing, like I said, is what? LinkedIn strategy. What can you do? The first thing you can do, what's your title on LinkedIn? If your title on LinkedIn isn't already technical writer, not technical writer in brackets, open to a freelance or something like that, you have to make your title technical writer because you're trying to get noticed, right? You've done the work, you've started technical writing, you've started putting out content out there, and you want to establish yourself as technical writer. Change your LinkedIn title to technical writer, right? And then you can put in brackets open to freelance so that people can know that you're open to freelance work. I've always gotten opportunities from the content I put out there, from visibility. I've taken advantage of visibility even before I knew it could do something for me. Because when I started writing, before I knew about technical writing, I used to put out content out there because I loved sharing knowledge. I loved helping people solve problems, like I said earlier. And companies that reaching out to me and say, "Oh, I love your piece of content. I would love you to write for us and stuff like that." So you have to establish yourself as a technical writer on LinkedIn, right? So once you've made your title technical writer, something like technical writer, and then in brackets open to freelance, the second thing you have to do is post your samples weekly. You have to stay consistent. You have to stay consistent. Post your samples weekly. Post your samples as often as possible. Post your samples at least weekly. Secondly, write breakdowns of the tools that you try. You can write breakdowns on of the tools that you try multiple times a week. You can just talk about, oh, this I used Notion pages. I've also used this other GitHub pages, and these are this I prefer Notion to GitHub pages because of so and so reasons. You can put out contents like that because that would make people, job recruiters, companies, and every other person in this technical writing space to know that, oh, this person is an active technical writer and this person has actively used those tools. And it's also another way you can give back to the technical writing community, like something that I actively do, because there are many people online that haven't tried out what you have tried out. You might assume that they have, but most of them haven't. So by sharing such information on LinkedIn, for instance, you are enriching someone else with knowledge. All right. Now, the second thing I mentioned on how to get your first opportunity is what? Freelance platforms. Now you can leverage freelance platforms like Upwork, Contra, we work remotely. Upwork, for instance, is very much popular. I'm pretty sure you know Upwork. Then you can filter for technical writing, tutorial writer, developer documentation, whichever you're looking for. And then the third thing I mentioned was what? Open source. Now you can find open source projects on GitHub. You can start by making a Google search. You can find open source projects on GitHub. You can check for their, for instance, docs needed label. So you can find projects to contribute to, open source documentation projects you can contribute to, and you can offer to write like a short guide or improve an existing one. Then the fourth thing I mentioned was what? Applying to internships and junior roles. That's one thing you can also do to get your first opportunity. You can look out for internships and junior roles. So you can look for content marketing, developer relations, or support roles, technical writing roles, and you can write documentation from those. Now, write this down. Show up online. Show up online. Share what I write. Share what I write. Volunteer when I can. Volunteer when I can. So write down, show up online, share what I write, volunteer when I can. All right. Now let's move on to the second part where I tell you how you can create high quality content. Um, Not to brag, but I pretty much create very high quality content, as many have testified. At my workplace, outside of my workplace, I create very high quality content, and I always say it only gets better because actually, the more you create high quality content and the more you stay curious, you will keep learning better ways on improving your skill as a technical writer because the learning never ends. The learning never ends in this space. So I would say I am 95% equipped to tell you how you can actually create high quality content because I do that. All right. Okay. Now that you know how to get started in technical writing, I'm going to talk about creating content that is clear. So when I say high quality content, what do I mean? So I mean content that is clear. Secondly, useful, most importantly, useful and respected. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is know your audience. For you to be able to create high quality content, the first thing you need to do is what? Know your audience. Now, before writing anything, answer these questions. One, who is this for? Who is this for? Two, what do they already know? What do they already know? Three, what are they trying to do? What did I say? The first thing you do is what? Know your audience. And you have to ask yourself this question before you write anything. Who is this content for? Who is this documentation for? Who is this what do they already know? When you determine who they are, that's the target audience or audiences, because they can be multiple target audiences that you're targeting that content or directing the content to, right? So once you've figured out who the content is intended for, the second thing is determining what do they already know. So you don't waste time telling them something they already know, all right? So what do they already know? And thirdly, what are they trying to do? What are they trying to do? You need to answer those three questions. Those are very This is the approach I use. This is the approach I always use. I have a process. I have a specific process. I won't say specific is I would say more of an iterative process, but I have a process that I take to create high quality content, and these are the processes I am sharing with you. So I use these processes weekly to create high quality content. So it's very important that you pay attention. All right. So for example, um you're writing a documentation or a guide on how to integrate with our API for developers. You're writing a blog post on why we moved from Heroku to another platform for engineers and CTOs. You're writing a tutorial on creating a chatbot with Node.js for beginners. All right. So I don't know if you understand I don't know if you understand the idea of what I don't know if you understand what I'm referring to here. So I'm giving you examples of knowing your audience. So if you're writing an article on how to integrate with our API, that kind of article, who are you writing for? Who are you targeting? Developers, right? If you're writing an article on why we moved from this platform to another platform for a company, who are you targeting? For instance, Heroku to another company, a cloud related company. You're targeting mostly engineers and CTOs. You're writing a tutorial on create a chatbot with Node.js. Who are you targeting? Beginners. All right. Now, so just you have to be able to determine the target audience, who it's for, what they already know, and what they are trying to do. So write this down. Good writing starts with knowing who I'm helping and what they need. Good writing starts with what? Knowing who I'm helping and what they need. Please jot that down. You can pause the video and jot it down. Now, the second thing that you need to know that I use for creating high quality content is structure before you write. I have never written a content without creating an outline. I always create an outline. I'll tell you why. You need to structure before you write. Now, good structure equates clear thinking. If you start writing an article without, you can literally tell the difference between an article that has a good structure and one that doesn't. You can tell the difference. It's very clear. Now, good structure equates to clear thinking. Now, how do you outline your content? So, like I said earlier, to create the steps for creating high quality content is what? The first one is knowing your audience, right? And then the second one is what? Creating an outline. So, when I say outline, I'm referring to the structure of the content, right? Now, I'll give you steps on how to outline content for documentation and for articles. Now, starting with documentation, let's say you need to figure out the title of the documentation. Already you know you have defined the target audiences already. You have defined the target audiences. So now you have to craft the title of the documentation. So let's say the title of documentation is how to integrate Stripe API. Then the next thing you do is what? Start with the introduction. What's the introduction? So documentation I'm referring to here is any technical document that explains a particular process. I think I would call this a how-to guide, right? I'll call this a how-to guide. Now, you start with the introduction. What does this documentation cover? What does this guide cover? All right. And then you go into the steps. So you have your title, your introduction, and then you go into the steps. So step one, step two. So step one could be set up Stripe account. That could be the heading. You also need to learn heading formats. All right. So you can Google the various heading formats we have. We have heading one, heading two, heading three, heading four, heading five, heading six, and they all differ in terms of font size and font width and font weight. I think that should be font weight. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please do a Google research. Now Google search. Sorry. All right. Like I said, you have steps. Step one, step two, step three. And step one could be set up your Stripe account. Set up Stripe account. Step two could be create test key. Step three could be make your first request. All right. Then you have any other section where I'll call this a troubleshooting section, where you have like you solve common problems that users who have tried this process encounter, and then you solve the problems. You give answers to the problems, short brief answers to the problems. Then you have like any other link to any resource that would help the readers can come after this troubleshooting section. You can add like related links to the topic that would help them solve the issue, or give them more insight into the issue, or anything related to the topic that would help them, because the whole point is helping the user, all right, not yourself. It's not about you, it's about the user. Now, for articles, how do you structure good content? How do I structure high quality content for articles? You need to start with an introduction, similar to what I said for the documentation, right? The how to guide I use as an example. You need to start, like I said, you have we're creating an outline, right? You're creating an outline. You've been assigned a particular topic to write about. You might have not been given a topic. You asked to research a topic on a particular idea or concept. What do you do? What's the first thing you do? Like I said, you define who the target audience are. You need to know who the target audience, because you need to know who you're writing for and what they need from you. What is the aim, what is the goal of that content. All right. What's the purpose of the content? You need to define it in writing. Define it in writing, or have it at the back of your head. But most of the time, it's best to define it in writing. Then you create your outline, and your outline would consist of, the intro. You have an intro. The outline can be just a brief document where you just list out what you tend to cover in the article. So one, it can be intro, and you can just put like a brief sentence, like a short blurb on, okay, I would introduce the reader to the concepts, and I'll tell them what they tend to gain from reading the article. As simple as that. Then you have your intro. The second thing, your second point could be a second bullet point, and you say the first heading would be why the switch happened, or what is, or an overview of the topic. Understand? So you start step by step. So you take the reader from the first step to the second step. The step I'm referring to is the logical step. So there's something we call logical flow in technical writing. So you're walking the reader through step by step. I'm not referring to tutorials now. I'm referring to a content that has structure, different headings. Like I said, do a research on the various heading formats that we have and how to use them. So in this case, you have the first heading, which is your heading one, which represents your title, the title of the article, right? And then you have your introduction, and then you have the various headings and subheadings that would fall under each section. It's tough to explain this without giving you an example, but this is a theoretical video. So maybe I can do another video where I show you how to do this practically. All right, so you have different sections. Now, for each of those sections, let's say you have the first section, which is heading two, because you can only have one heading one, right? So you have the first section that comes after the introduction, which is heading two. And in that section, it's broken down into different paragraphs. The reason why it is because the reason why we're breaking the content into various sections, because you have to tackle one idea. You have to have one section for tackling one particular idea, so you don't confuse the reader. And like I said, to maintain logical flow, you can Google what logical flow is, but it's simply carrying the lead reader along so they can read it and understand and flow with the article. You start from the basics, then you take them down and you take them. It's like you're walking someone through a process or a concept. You don't want to jump from one thing to another. All right. Now, we can look for example of good articles out there and see what I'm referring to. So once you have your outline, you end with a conclusion where you summarize your key points, key takeaways from the article and stuff like that. So your article comprises of an introduction, the body of the article that consists of the main content, where you are telling the main points, where you're talking to the reader and answering whatever question they had, and includes visuals, which could range from screenshots, illustrations to technical diagrams, architectural diagrams, and whatnot. It could also include tables as well, anything that helps with visual clarity. The reason why I'm rushing this is because this is a lot to compile into a short video. All right. So that's what I mean by creating an outline. You have an overall idea of what you're trying to write before you start writing. Very important. So you can write this down. Structure first, then write. Don't start with a blank page. Structure first, then write. Don't start with a blank page. Now, the third thing I'm going to talk about after you have known your audience. Secondly, after you have created the structure before you start writing, the third thing is writing. Is the actual writing of the content. Now you write with clarity. You write with code. You write with context. Now, this is where most people struggle because they want to sound smart in writing the content. You want to sound smart. You want to sound like I know this thing. Now you don't need to sound smart. You need to be clear because that's all your user cares about. That's all the reader cares about. They want to understand. They want to. That's a unique skill of technical writer. The art of being able to walk a reader through a certain process, explain a concept to a certain reader, a certain target audience. It's an art that you have to hone. It's a skill you have to hone as a technical writer. Now, you don't need to sound smart, you just need to be clear. Use simple language. Avoid filler words. Use actual examples. It's very important. When necessary, use examples that your target audience can relate. You cannot be using an example of tomatoes and oranges where you're talking to a developer. You have to use an example in that context, that in the context of what you're writing about, and explain it to them using that example, an example they can put themselves in, put their shoes in, or rather, how do they say it? Put your shoe in the problem, or put your shoe, put your shoes in, or something like that. So um, you have to write from the reader's perspective. You can never write from your perspective. Write from their perspective. Write, put yourself in the reader's shoes. Try to understand what they're trying to understand. All right, figure it out and write from that angle and use examples as much as possible to help them understand the concept or or the information you're trying to pass across. And also, if you're using code blocks, make sure if you're showing the code blocks, you're explaining the code blocks, you're giving them context. If you're using visuals, you have to there has to be a leading text that leads into the visuals. You can't just from out of nowhere, wow, you just have this visual and then you're expecting the user to be in your head and understand what you were trying to say. That's the art. The art of a technical writer is to put yourself in the shoes of the reader and write in such a way that you are not thinking about you, you're thinking about the reader. All right. Now, and also don't forget logical flow is very important. So for example, I'm going to give you an example of what I would call bad writing. So this is the bad example. So let's say you're writing something, you say executing the appropriate function may return the required response depending on the configuration. Now, a better way you can write that is run npm start to start the server. If successful, you will see server running. Now, npm start note is in a code block format. So the backticks, you have the backticks at the front and at the back, which will highlight that text, that command npm start as a command, so the reader can clearly see that that's a command. So you can say run npm start in code blocks to start the server, full stop. If successful, comma, you see server running on port 3000 in code blocks. That's in code blocks, so you see server running on port 3000 in your terminal. Now you can decide to not put the server running on port 3000 depending on the style guide you're working with. It could be highlighted, but it has to be different from the text. It has to be different from the rest of the words in the sentence, because you're obviously pointing it out, right? You could also even include, like, you can put a colon after the sentence, or you can say see the screenshot below to show you what you might see in your terminal as an output in your terminal, so they can visualize it, they can understand it. The whole point is communicating to your target audience in a way they can understand. All right. Now, always explain what the command is doing. Now, the difference between this bad example and this good example, the bad example was executing the appropriate function. Executing the appropriate function may return the required response depending on the configuration. And the better example gave them an actual example. It gave them like run npm start to start the server. If successful, this is what you will see on your terminal. And if unsuccessful, this is what you will see. All right. So you're putting again, you're putting yourself in the shoes of a reader, and you're saying this is what you will see and this is what you will not see, not assuming. All right. Now, so basically what you're doing is you're explaining what they are doing. You're telling the reader that this is what you will do and this is the result you will get. So you're explaining so you have to always explain what they're doing, why they are doing it, and then what happens next. So that's a better example. Okay. So write this down. Every sentence should move the reader forward. Every sentence should move the reader forward in the article. That's where logical flow comes in. You're carrying the reader along. You are not writing for yourself. You already understand this. You're not writing it for yourself. You're writing for people that don't understand. All right. Good. So now another thing you need to note is editing like your reader is next to you. There's something I do when I'm writing. I speak out loud. I speak out loud. I'm writing, so because you tend to sometimes it tends to get stuck in your own head. You're writing and then you're writing for yourself. You have to ensure you're writing for the reader. And one way you can do that is you read out loud. Read like the reader is next to you. Read it out loud and read what you've written. Read it out loud. Ask, where might someone get stuck? Where might someone get stuck in this process? Ask those questions and address it in the article. Ask, can I remove or simplify this sentence? Those questions are very important to ask. So good editing is equal to good writing. So you can put this checklist of items at the back of your head. You can also jot them down. So one, you need clear headings. Clear headings are very important, and there has to be a logical flow between your headings. You cannot start talking about something that you should be talking about below at the top. You can't. You have to start. You have to take the reader from one step to another. Time will allow me, or otherwise I would have shown you examples of these things. But I'm pretty exhausted already because I've spoken for almost an hour. All right, so clear headings, you need to have your checklist of items, clear headings, number one, number two, short paragraphs, three, numbered steps. Numbered steps. I believe in breaking the rules if it will help the reader understand what they want faster, or have enough context. Anything that would help, that will be useful to the reader, feel free to break the rule as long as it's in the favor of the reader. All right. So clear headings are important, short paragraphs are important. If you need to break up the sentences, do that. If you don't need to, leave it. If it will help the reader understand it better, yeah. So number steps, use bulleted points where necessary, use number steps where necessary to break out tasks, break out the steps and give them a logical picture of what they should need to do from this, the first step they need to do, the second step they need to do, and so on and so forth. Then screenshot or diagram, add screenshots or diagram where necessary. Also, if you're using code, there must be an explanation by the side, all right? So you can write this down. Don't just write, test it, edit it, then share it. Don't just write, test it, edit it, and then share it. So, what are the tools and habits that can help? So, you can these are the tools that you can that can support you. So the first thing is writing and editing. You can use Grammarly, but use it very carefully because you have to be sure that it aligns with the context. Whatever Grammarly is suggesting has to align with what you're doing, has to align with the context of you. You are the writer, own it. All right. Grammarly is only there to help you. Own the tool. All right. Don't let the tool derail you from what you're writing about. Be careful why you use such tools. Hemingway, you can use Hemingway. You can use ChatGPT to structure your ideas, but I don't advise using ChatGPT at this early stage if you were not a writer before ChatGPT, if you're not a technical writer before ChatGPT. I don't advise you starting with ChatGPT. If you start with ChatGPT now, you will never learn how to be never learn how to be an actual technical writer because you would rely solely on the tool and you will not be creative. You will lack creativity. So please, as much as possible, try writing yourself for now. All right. When you've honed the skill enough, then you can start relying on ChatGPT because by that time you're already a technical writer. Okay. Then publishing, you can you publish to? Like I said earlier, Hashnote, Dev.to, GitHub pages, Notion, you can publish to those can publish to Medium as well. Learning and grow, how you can learn more and grow more. You can join the Write the Docs community to learn more, to connect with fellow technical writers. You can check for Reddit threads, technical writing Reddit threads. You can check on tech blogs, you can read blogs, and see how technical writers write. Read as much as you can. The more you read, the more you understand. There's something I do. I always read other technical writers' work. I read. I actually take my time to read because it gives me more, it expands my knowledge base. It gives me more ideas on how I can amplify my structure, make it better, like I said, learning never ends. Please don't ever assume you know everything. Don't ever assume you know it all. You don't know it all. All right. So the things that can make your content stand out are you showing the actual problems and how you solve them, including screenshots, diagrams, or visuals, keeping your introduction short and getting to the point, linking to helpful resources, hyperlinking. You can Google what that is. You can end it with a short key takeaway or conclusion. It can also help because it helps summarizes the entire content piece. Okay, so I think I'll just close now by saying if you want to become a technical writer, you don't need to wait. You need to learn one tool, write one article or documentation, share one thing publicly this month. All right. So you will improve with every piece. It always gets better. You keep learning. As I'm still learning, you keep learning. And if this video helped you, feel free to share it with someone else figuring out their path. And let me know in the comments if you want more videos or portfolios, interviews, or writing reviews. Or if you want like a deep video into structure on how to actually structure a practical video and less of a theoretical video on how to structure and actually write an article, on how to write an article or documentation, I could do that in my spare time. So just let me know. So you don't have to be an expert to teach. You have to be clear. That's what makes you a technical writer. Bye.